Traders, how are you? With Marcello. We're doing the recap of what happened in the markets last week. We had a little bit of trouble with the video, but we still got audio going. So here we go. Overall for the week, we had mostly the Omicron, however you say it, the new variant of the pandemic. A lot of concerns about that, especially about the economic recovery, about how things are going to function. So U.S. stocks now have been low for 4 weeks in a row. Overall this week as well, they were negative as well. European markets mostly mixed for the week. Istanbul, being an emerging market, moves a little bit more than most. That went up 7.54%. The next biggest winner is Russia, 2.67%. And then big markets like the DAX in Germany were negative. Latin America and Canadian markets were mostly mixed as well. My dear and beautiful Colombia was the biggest winner there at over 8%. And we have Canada at a negative 2.06%. Africa and the Middle East, mostly mixed. South Africa taking the crown at 3.19%, while Saudi Arabia was the biggest loser there at 3.82% negative. And in the far, far east, we have Philippines being the biggest loser at 3.16% negative. And then we have the Nikkei close behind as well. Bitcoin and cryptocurrency news, we had a huge drop in Bitcoin at almost 20%, even though it's recovered just a little bit. Early Saturday morning, overnight, there was 410,000 crypto accounts liquidated in the past 24 hours. That totaled $2.6 billion, and the biggest liquidation was about $27 million. Ethereum, being the second biggest crypto, lost over 14% as well in the past 24 hours. Again, that was Sunday overnight, right? So think Sunday morning and then all the way back to Friday evening. It went down to about 3,500. And obviously, all this has to do about the COVID variant. It's affecting all of the markets overall. Bitcoin for the week is down 14.19% at just below 47,500. And we did have news from, for example, the president of Salvador that they bought the dip at an average of just over 48,000. And if I'm not mistaken as well, we had the Michael Saylor from MicroStrategy, which is the company, the public company that took money out, billions of dollars to buy Bitcoin. He was talking about re-upping his investments as well. Commodities, global food prices are at an all-time high according to the UN Food and Agriculture Association. Global food prices, you guys are probably seeing that when you go to the store. And not only that, but back in October, we talked about how the fertilizer prices were also at an all-time high. So if you thought things were bad now, just wait until those costs that are implemented to grow the food actually go through the system. And that on top of the supply chain crisis and everything is exploding. We even have a situation where the U.S. stockpiles of diesel fuel is sitting at a 20-year low. So not only do we have a problem where everything is skyrocketing in price, but we even have a problem getting things from one place to the other. And if you guys don't know, in the United States, the majority of the transport is the big semi-trucks, and a lot of them, most of them, are run on diesel fuel. So if we have a situation where we're at a currently 20-year low in stockpiles of the diesel fuel, and we have increasing prices, for example, the October fertilizer prices hit an all-time high. Imagine what's going to happen a few months from now, especially in 2022 when all that moves through the system. Get ready because we're going to probably have some price shocks. Cost of energy in Finland as well went up by 5 times. This is due to a colder than normal winter and also part of the energy crisis with the explosion of prices. You know, if you guys don't remember, we talked about how the prices of coal and even oil, everything is absolutely exploding. And anywhere between 30 to 40%, depending on the country, still uses things like coal to be able to have their energy power plants. And so if the cost of the commodities are exploding, that means that our energy prices are going to be exploding as well. U.S. crude down for the week. Obviously, that has to do with the fear of the Omicron variant going through the economic system and obviously affecting the economy. U.S. crude went down 2.85% to 66.26, while Brent, which is the international crude, went down by over 4%. That closed at 69.88. Singapore increased its gold reserves by about 20% earlier this year, very quietly. The central bank said that they were ensuring the resiliency of their present portfolio. They bought just over 26 tons. It happened in May and June. One of the things that's actually pretty interesting, because if you guys don't know, Singapore is one of the smallest countries in the world, but also one of the richest. They have two of the 10 largest sovereign wealth funds in the world. And remember, Singapore has literally absolutely nothing. They don't have resources. They don't have absolutely anything. They've just become an economic powerhouse because they have, good rule of law, low corruption, and obviously very low taxes. Precious metals are lower for the week. Gold went down 0.17% to 1,783, while silver went down 2.51% to 2262. The financial and banking news, the U.S. Fed chief indicated that the central bank could speed up their tightening of monetary policy while speaking before a Senate committee. And if you have seen what's happening overall in the markets, notice that the last 4 weeks of stocks have been negative, cryptos are now negative, and so there could be a bit of a connection, let's say, right? The world, unfortunately, the economic system in the world right now is literally just on a zip line. Zip line is not the right word, but they're literally just, it's like a drug addict, right? The government just keep pumping more and more money into the system, and the economy just has that drug connected right to its arm. And so obviously things are going down. Part of the reason, obviously, because of the variant that was announced, and there's a lot of hysteria with that, but also because the U.S. central bank has continued to start taking money out of the system, so they're not putting as much, drugs into the system, essentially, right? So if a drug addict doesn't get his drugs, what happens? Things go very negatively. Consumer prices across the 19 countries in the Eurozone are rising at a record rate. The actual number, official number, let's say, was 4.9% in November, which was the highest since record-keeping began in 1997. Remember, however, that a lot of the numbers that are included in these inflation numbers from the government aren't the real inflation numbers, right? I'm sure a lot of you guys have seen the prices of food, of meat, which have gone up 20, 30%. In the supermarket. We even have things like soy up 130%. Obviously, wood, there was a big hysteria about that last year, 160%. Copper 65%, aluminum 54%, all kinds of things. Live cattle up 28%. U.S. wheat 36%. Sugar is up 40%. U.S. cotton is up 38%. So even though the governments say that it's only single digits, the reality is that inflation is a lot higher. So if their numbers are rising at a record rate, imagine what the actual numbers are. Germany, fourth largest economy in the world, largest economy in Europe. Their inflation rose 6% year over year in November, which again, highest rate recorded since January 1997. And the central bank finally intervened in Turkey due to the fact that their currency, which is the lira, has reached record lows against the US dollar. They've collapsed 47%. And the central bank finally intervened, citing unhealthy market prices. So they went up 5% from the record lows. U.S. Congress passes a bill Thursday as well to keep federal government funding until February 18th. Both the Senate and the House of Representatives approved with a majority, and some GOP or Republican senators look to hold up the legislation to block COVID-19 mandates. The news in politics, nearly 400 years after the first English ship arrived in the former British colony of Barbados, the small island in the Caribbean. They became independent in 1966, but their head of state was still the Queen Elizabeth II. So they officially woke up on Tuesday to become a republic due to the fact that they don't like all the mandates that were being issued by the British, so they have officially removed Queen Elizabeth as the head of state. Economic news, the Chinese factory activity unexpectedly grew in November. France's final quarter three GDP numbers was a 3% quarter over quarter, while their inflation rose annually at 3.4%, which is, again, the highest since September 2008. The ADP National Employment Report released on Wednesday that the number of jobs in the private sector grew by 534,000 in November. While that seems like a good number because it was higher than what analysts anticipated, we still have this employment crisis in the United States where there's a record number of job openings and companies just can't find people to fill the positions. Americans filing unemployment benefits last week rose to their lowest level since the outbreak of the pandemic in March 20th. The applications for the week climbed 222,000, ending the week of November 27th. And officially, the entire U.S. economy added 210,000 jobs in November, which is far below the expectations of economists, while the unemployment rate plunged 0.4 to 4.2%. So notice we have a little bit of conflicting information when it comes to the economy. Corporate news, Merck went down by 5% after the likelihood of their full COVID-19 pill authorization faded. Gap Inc. as well is down 17% this year after they have cited ongoing supply chain disruption. So they can't make their clothes. They can't get their clothes to where they're needed. So obviously, if they don't have clothes to sell, they're going to have a big problem trying to sell stuff because that's what they sell. Shares of Moderna fell almost 12% on Wednesday after they lost an appeal for a ruling involving a drug's delivery technology. They're down over 26% for the year, but still up almost 200% in 2021. And shares of Tesla fell 6% after it was revealed that CEO Elon Musk sold more than 934,000 shares, came in at a value of just over $1 billion. Over the last year, in 2021, I should say, it's still up almost 44%. And DocuSign, which is the popular online company that allows you to sign documents, which is used a lot in real estate, they went down 42% to $135 due to the fact that their expectations for their numbers were below analyst expectations as well. Trade news, Thursday, Australia reported that they had a surplus of almost $8 billion in their trade, even as iron ore export values plunged 23%. Remember that Australia kind of has their feet in both the West and the Asia corner. So they, until recently, almost had years and decades without an actual recession. So even though one of their main exports, which is iron ore, they're a big mining country, even though that went down by 23%, they still had a huge surplus. In technology, Hyundai, the company from South Korea, is putting a lot more money into electric vehicles and robotics as part of an investment plan to transform the company from a conventional car maker to a hydrogen-based tech company. They are betting on, obviously, batteries or hydrogen fuel cells by 2028. The only problem is that most of the world doesn't really have any hydrogen fueling stations, even though the battery-powered cars, their recharging stations are starting to get a lot more popular by the day. In investment news, Jack Dorsey resigned as the CEO of Twitter on Monday, 15 years after co-founding the company. He says that he wants the company to move on after its founders. The shares rose about 12%, even though they closed at the end of the day a little bit under 3%. And Parag Agrawal is the new CEO, and he was the previous CTO, which is the Chief Tech Officer. He's going to focus now on his other company, which is called Square. Some of you guys who use Venmo, for example, that company is owned by Square. And he's going to change the number from Square to Block to be able to focus on the blockchain. And this is what I kind of always mentioned to you guys, that the future that I believe is blockchain, not necessarily cryptos, but the technology that cryptos use, which is blockchain. Tuesday, CEO Elon Musk warned that SpaceX could go bankrupt in a letter sent to internal employees. He talked about the problem with the Raptor engines that go into the Starship rockets. So it's facing a major shakeup if they're not able to resolve that problem. Their Starship rocket uses as many as 39 Raptor engines, and it says that they're going to need a flight rate of 2 weeks. A flight rate of every 2 weeks next year to be able to stay in business. So that's not bueno, even though that'll probably not happen, right? They'll get some funding. Era of the big Chinese companies heading to the U.S. to raise money may be coming to an end. The company called Didi, which is commonly known as the Uber of China, says that they're going to delist their shares on the New York Stock Exchange in preference for Hong Kong. This is probably to please the Chinese government in Beijing. Remember that they took over Hong Kong against the agreement that they had with British and the U.S. In international events, the EU, the European Union, Russia, and Iranian diplomats sounded rather upbeat despite the absence of the U.S. after they met each other face-to-face for the first time in 5 months to be able to try to salvage the 2015 nuclear deal. Now, Iran didn't want to face the U.S. They said that they didn't want to see them face to face, but there is upbeat, let's say, negotiations. And NATO foreign minister warned the Russian government on Thursday about any attempts to further destabilize Ukraine would be a costly mistake. There's a lot of supposed Russian military buildup, according to the U.S. intelligence, and they're saying that Russia's going to launch an offensive as early as next year involving up to 175,000 troops. They demand a United States guarantee that the Ukraine is not going to join NATO and refrain NATO, which is the military alliance that is mostly in the West, Germany and the United States, among others. They want them to refrain from certain military activities there in Ukraine. The World Health Organization stated on Friday that the Omicron is detected. Let me start that over. The WHO stated on Friday that the new variant, the Omicron, has been detected in 38 countries, but there's still no deaths to date of the new variant. And also the WHO chief scientist Soumya Swaminathan, hopefully I said that right, said that people shouldn't panic over the emergence of Omicron and said it was too early to say if the current vaccinations would be able to need to be modified to fight it. Unusual facts. Huge cache of coins are buried now in the city of Augsburg, Germany. They were found. They could be as old as 2,000 years old, and there was about 5,500 of these coins found while they were excavating for residential buildings that they were building in the city of Augsburg in Germany. It's actually pretty interesting. They were Roman coins. And one of the things that's really interesting in the natural disasters, a blizzard warning for the big island of Hawaii, which is extremely rare, is in effect until Sunday morning, as they're expecting up to 12 inches of snow. And this is one of the things that I talked to you guys about, that we're going to start seeing a lot more of this extreme weather around the world. There was a big volcano in Indonesia that just went off. The name escapes me at the moment, but they're forecasting winds of up to over 100 miles per hour. That should be over 200 kilometers per hour easy, and warning residents to stay indoors. That's the news for this week, guys. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Don't forget to subscribe. And we'll see you next week. Have a good one.